I never expected everyone to be thrilled, but I also didn't expect the silence. When I sent out the invitations for my son's naming ceremony, there was no chorus of congratulations, no warm calls from family, no excitement in the group chat. Just silence. My mother took 2 days to respond, and even then, it was a curt "we'll see." My sister replied with a thumbs up. And my father didn't reply at all. It was my first child. The first grandchild in the family. A moment I had dreamed of since I was a teenager, even through the years when I thought I might never get to have it. I didn't grow up imagining wedding dresses or honeymoons. I imagined the moment I'd get to hold my baby in front of the people who raised me, who shaped me, and say, "This is who we are now." But from the moment I told them I was pregnant, with a donor, no husband, the warmth vanished. My mother called it reckless. My father didn't speak to me for 3 months. My sister, who once said we were ride or die, started declining every invitation I sent her. Baby shower? She was sick. Ultrasound viewing? Busy. And now, the naming ceremony. The one I was hosting not in defiance, but in reverence. I had chosen the synagogue we grew up in. I'd asked the same rabbi who blessed my bat mitzvah to bless my son. I even honored tradition by keeping the name a surprise until the ceremony. Still, on that morning, as I adjusted the tiny blue kippah on my son's head and checked the catering for the 10th time, I could feel a knot in my stomach that no amount of chamomile tea had touched. Because I knew they would come, but I also knew they wouldn't come happy. They arrived 10 minutes late. My parents walked in like they were entering a courtroom. My sister wore sunglasses indoors. Nobody kissed me hello. Nobody asked to hold the baby. I introduced them anyway, with a smile that cost me more than they'd ever understand. "This is my son," I said, holding him up gently. "He's about to receive his name." My father looked away. My sister checked her phone. And my mother? She rolled her eyes. Right there, in the middle of the sanctuary. Like the entire thing was a joke, I felt the rabbi's hand on my back. He was old now, older than I remembered, with eyes that had softened over decades of witnessing lives unfold in both celebration and catastrophe. He whispered, "They'll hear you, even if they don't listen yet." His words stayed with me as I stepped up to the bima. I held my son close and began the ceremony. My voice shook only a little as I spoke about legacy, about strength, about choosing to bring a child into a complicated world because love was still the most courageous thing we could offer. Then I said his name, Elias Pero. I heard the murmur. My mother's audible scoff. My sister's sarcastic breath. But the rabbi, he froze, then slowly, he turned to me. His lips parted. And I swear, there were tears in his eyes, and just as he opened his mouth to speak, my father stood up, his chair scraped against the floor, and he walked out. For a moment, I just stood there, holding Elias Pero, feeling his tiny breath against my neck, trying to stay upright while my father's footsteps echoed toward the exit. The door didn't slam, it clicked shut with a restraint that somehow made it worse. The rabbi hadn't moved. His lips were still parted, and his eyes still held that glimmer of something. Recognition. Grief. I wasn't sure. My mother stared straight ahead, face tight, jaw locked. My sister muttered, "Of course she would," just loud enough for the front row to hear. I could feel the guests shifting in their seats, confused, whispering. Some probably wondering why they'd come. Others maybe wondering what they'd just witnessed, but I kept going. I finished the blessing, kissed the top of my son's head, and sat down. The rabbi stepped forward then, voice slower than usual, deeper. He didn't start with the usual Torah portion or parable. Instead, he looked at me, then at my mother, and said, "There are names that carry generations inside them. Names that some families bury not because they are unworthy, but because the pain is too sharp to remember." A pause. I knew something was happening, but I didn't know what. Elias Pero, he continued, was my best student. Every neck turned. He was your uncle, the rabbi said softly, and your mother's brother. I stared at her. My mother. Who'd never spoken the name. Not once in my entire life. He died at 17, the rabbi said. In a way that left this family shattered, ashamed, and silent. I was shaking. I'd chosen the name because it felt right. Elias, for the resilience of prophets. Pero, a Spanish middle name from my donor's culture. It wasn't a plan. It was instinct. And now it was pulling up something that had been buried for decades, and why Mother stood up. Her voice cut the air like glass. You had no right. I didn't know if she was speaking to me or to the rabbi. You had no right to drag this into today. The rabbi didn't flinch. She didn't drag anything. She named her son. You're the one who buried yours. There was an audible gasp. Someone in the third row got up to leave. I sat frozen, Elias still asleep in my arms, like none of it touched him. Like he was above the war erupting in whispers and glances around him. Followed her after the ceremony. She'd stormed out after her outburst, and for the first time in my life, I didn't hesitate to go after her. I found her outside, leaning against the car, breathing like she'd just run a marathon. She didn't look at me. Why didn't you ever tell me about him? I asked. Why erase him? She didn't speak for a while. Just stared at the parking lot like it had the answers. When you were born, she finally said, I swore I'd never speak his name again. Because saying it meant remembering what we lost. And remembering meant knowing I couldn't protect you from the same kind of world. I stepped closer. But you didn't protect me. You just kept me in the dark. She turned then, and her eyes were red but not soft. I didn't want another child who didn't live the way we were supposed to. That hit like a slap. And in that moment, I knew what she meant. Not just Elias. But me. My choice. My family. My child. We were all deviations from her map. And she hated us for it, even if she couldn't say it out loud. I'm not sorry. I said, voice low. I named him with love. I didn't know the story, but maybe I was meant to tell it. She opened her mouth. Closed it again, then she said something I'll never forget. He didn't kill himself, you know. That's what we told people. But that's not what happened. And then she got in the car and drove away. For 2 days after the ceremony, I couldn't stop thinking about what she said. He didn't kill himself. That's what we told people. But that's not what happened. Always known something in our family didn't add up. The sharp edges of silence. The things we never said. The way my mother flinched at certain names, the way my father avoided certain dates. But now, there was a crack in the silence. And through it, something was leaking. Truth, maybe. Pain, definitely. I tried calling her. Once. No answer. I didn't call again. I knew she wouldn't tell me more, not like that. So I did something I hadn't done in years. I drove to the house I grew up in. The attic door still creaked the same way. My parents always kept it locked when we were kids, claiming there were mice or insulation dangers or some other excuse. But I knew the key was hidden behind the old Hebrew dictionary in the study. It was exactly where I remembered. Dust clung to everything. The light bulb flickered to life, barely illuminating the cramped space. Boxes, old holiday decorations, yellowed books. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for until I saw the shoebox. Blue with a broken lid. Tucked behind a pile of cracked menorahs, inside, letters. Dozens of them. Some in envelopes addressed to my grandparents' house, some loose. All of them signed the same way. EPI read the first one sitting on the attic floor, Elias's. Handwriting looping and nervous. Mom says if I keep acting like this, I'll never be normal again. But I don't want to be normal. I want to be safe. Another one, a few weeks later, I tried to talk to the rabbi, but he looked scared. Like if he helped me, he'd lose something. I think maybe I'm already lost. And then there's someone. His name is Avi. He said he'd wait for me until I turned 18. That's 5 months away. But now he's gone. And I think they made him leave. I sat there, breath tight, hands trembling. My uncle was in love with another boy. And someone, maybe my grandparents, maybe others in the community, had intervened. Had shut it down. Had buried it. The last letter was stained. Water, or maybe tears. Dated just 3 days before he died. They said if I don't stop, I won't be welcome anymore. Not in this house, not in this synagogue, not in this family. I didn't ask to be born like this. I only asked to be seen. I heard footsteps, I froze. It was my sister. She was standing at the top of the attic stairs, arms crossed, expression unreadable. I figured you'd come here, she said. I didn't answer. I held up the letter. You knew? She hesitated. Then nodded. I found them after he died. I was 9. Mom made me swear never to speak of it. She said if I did, we'd all be cursed. I couldn't breathe. He wasn't weak, I said. They broke him. She didn't deny it. He loved someone, I whispered. And they erased him for it. And then she dropped a bomb I never saw coming. You're not the only one with a child, she said. I have a daughter. She's 8. Her name is Avia. I blinked. You named her after Avi? She nodded slowly. Mom doesn't know. She thinks it's just Hebrew for God is my father. But I know. And now you do too. I stared at her, stunned. But why did you hide her? Why didn't you tell me? Because I saw what they did to Elias, she said. And I was terrified you'd judge me the same way they judged him. That hurt. Deeper than I expected. I would never, I said. She looked at me for a long time. Then prove it, she said. Come with me. Meet her. And as I stood up, brushing dust off my knees, I knew I was walking into the next chapter of a story that should have never been hidden in the first place. But what I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that someone else had found the letters first. Someone who had a very different plan for them. Avia had her uncle's eyes. I noticed it the moment she opened the door, something bright but shadowed, like wonder touched by warning. She was cautious around me at first, hiding half behind my sister's leg, peeking out like a question. But then she saw Elias in my arms, and everything shifted. She knelt on the floor, softly tickling his tiny foot, and whispered, "Hi, cousin." Like it was sacred. I wanted to cry, but I didn't. Not then. My sister made tea while Avia showed me her drawings, planets, oceans, a girl with a sword taller than her body. I asked who it was. That's me, she said. But in my dream, I'm not scared of anything. Later, while Avia napped curled up on the couch next to my baby, my sister and I finally talked. Really talked. I wanted to tell you, she said, her voice breaking. About Elias. About her. But every time I tried, I saw Mom's face. That fear. That rage. And I didn't want her to erase my daughter too. I understand, I said. But we have to stop pretending silence keeps anyone safe. She nodded. There's more. She got up and came back with something wrapped in a faded pillowcase. She unwrapped it and laid it in front of me. It was a photo album. Not one I'd ever seen before. Inside were pictures of Elias's laughing, dancing, holding hands with a boy who had dimples and eyes full of something fierce. There were notes tucked between the pages. Poetry. Confessions. A kind of love story they were never allowed to tell. My sister pointed to the last page. There's a letter here. From the boy, Avi. Sent 2 years after Elias died. It came to our house. I think Mom intercepted it. But I found it hidden inside one of her cookbooks. I read it out loud, the words heavy in my throat. I still think about the night they came for me. Your uncle tried to stop them. He stood in the doorway, shouting. They pushed him aside. Told me if I didn't disappear, they'd ruin his life. I left. But I never stopped loving him. I'm sorry I didn't stay. I was shaking. My sister leaned against me, her hand on my arm. What did they do to him? I asked. She was quiet. Then said, Dad was the one who drove Avi to the train station. Told him never to come back. Grandpa cut Elias off financially. Mom made him go to counseling at the synagogue 3 times a week. They said it was conversion therapy, but it was abuse. He got quiet. Then angry. Then quiet again. And then he was gone. I held my son closer. I had named him Elias because I wanted him to have strength, resilience, history. I didn't know I'd also given him a legacy of silence and suffering. But maybe I had the chance to rewrite that. I want people to know, I said. Not just us. Everyone. What happened? Who he was. She looked alarmed. You're going to make it public? He deserves it. You know what Mom will do. She can't erase him again. That night, I went home and began scanning. Everything, letters, photos, the album. I started writing. I didn't know if it would be a blog post, a video, a book. I just knew I had to speak. I shared the story with the rabbi first. He sat in silence for a long time after reading it. Then he said, when Elias came to me, I was afraid too. I didn't defend him the way I should have. I let the community's fear guide me. I've carried that shame ever since. You can help make it right, I said. He nodded. I will. The next morning, I woke up to over 30 missed calls from my mother, from my father, from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Checked my inbox. The story had leaked. Someone had published the scanned letters online, with our names, and the headline wasn't just about Ella's, it was about me, about how my child's name had exposed a family's buried truth. And then I saw the email, from Avi. I stared at the screen, heart thudding. The subject line was simple, Elias Pero. It was Avi. After all these years, after all the silence, he had found me. The email wasn't long. Just a few paragraphs. But every word carried the weight of a past that refused to stay buried. I never stopped thinking about him, he wrote. Not one day. I left because I thought I was protecting him, but now I know I abandoned him when he needed me most. I've lived with that guilt. But seeing his name again, on your son, it undid me. You gave him back to the world. I read it over and over. And when I finally responded, I told him everything. About the ceremony. The letters. The fallout. About how my son had unknowingly reopened a wound, but also somehow started healing it. Avi replied again 2 days later. He said he would come. That he wanted to meet me. Meet my son. That he had something to return, something Elias gave him before they were forced apart. Meanwhile, the story kept spreading. The blog post, now shared by thousands, had lit up the community. Some reached out with kindness. Old classmates of Elias. Strangers who saw their own stories in his. Parents, teachers, people who had once been silent, now speaking. But others were furious. Defensive. I got threats. Anonymous emails telling me to stop digging up shame. My father called. I didn't answer. My mother showed up at my door. I want to see him, she said. At first, I said no, you lost the right. I know, she whispered. But I also lost a brother. And I never mourned him. I just erased him. And now I've almost erased you too. I let her in. She sat on the floor with Elias, watched him giggle as he chewed on a plush giraffe. I used to think grief was something you buried, she said. But I see now, it just grows in the dark. She asked to read the letters. I gave them to her. She didn't speak for an hour. Just cried. Softly, like she was afraid of being heard. When Avi arrived, it was quiet. He was older, of course. Weathered. But his eyes, those were the same eyes from the photographs. He held out a small velvet pouch. I kept it all this time, he said. Inside was a silver bracelet. Elias's initials carved on the inside. The edges worn smooth by years of touch. I held it in my palm, speechless. I want your son to have it, he said. If you're willing. I nodded. I couldn't speak. We held a second ceremony the following week. Smaller. No press. No spectacle. Just family, a few close friends, and the rabbi, who asked to say a few words. This family has shown us something rare, he said. That silence does not protect us. That names matter. That love buried is not love lost, but it must be brought into the light to be healed. And then I stepped forward. I looked at my son, at my mother and sister, at Avi standing in the back. I thought of Elias, the boy I never got to meet but somehow knew in my bones. I named my son after someone I didn't know, I said. But now I do. And I want everyone to know him too. Not just the tragedy, but the joy, the fire, the love. This is how we bring him back. This is how we change the ending. There was no applause. Just silence. And then tears, not from shame, but release. Later that night, as I rocked Elias to sleep, I whispered his name again, not with fear. Not with pain, but with power, and in that quiet, I felt it. We had broken the curse.